morning, everyone, and welcome to third Saturday seminar with the Douglas County Democratic Party. I know you're not here to see me, you're here to see Christy Davis, but I do have some announcements and a couple of things I'd really like to clear up because I keep seeing it in the news and on Facebook. So, first of all, if anyone wonders, the Douglas County Democrats takes political and financial compliance very seriously. I want you to know that Christy Davis was one of our silver sponsors. There were two Senate candidates that were silver sponsors to our county party, Christy Davis and Sandy Spidell-Newman. Now, because they have donated to our county party in excess of the amount that it costs to rent this place, we are not violating any rules to have her come and speak to us about her bid for U.S. Senate. However, I also asked her to come tell us about the USDA and the way that it was and the way it's supposed to be, right? Because we also know that when Trump is gone, we are going to have to rebuild everything, right? From education to healthcare to ag and all the programs, yeah, all of it. We have to rebuild all of it. So it's good to take a look back and see what the USDA was and hear about what it can be again with good leadership in place. So financial compliance, what else? All of our handouts are in compliance. We've done a good job, I think, as a county party, and I'm very proud of us for that. For also staying out of the social media wars, etc. So the other really big emotional thing was the 2025 statute that the Republicans passed when nobody was looking. And it says that if a senator leaves their seat after May, but in an election year, we do the regular process where that party comes up with a list of 3 finalists, and then whoever the governor is gets to pick from the list. But instead, this time, we're going to let that person have at least 2 full years in office. They are not going to be able to cancel the Kansas U.S. Senate race. And let me tell you why. If they try, there will be so many lawsuits so quickly, and the Supreme Court will have to make a decision very quickly. Can you imagine if the Supreme Court says it's okay for states to cancel federal elections? Wouldn't every blue state just do that to make sure that we don't lose a single seat? I just don't see that happening because blue states would cancel their elections really quickly, right? And then New York is going to be stuck with Chuck Schumer forever, among other things. But so I don't see that legally happening. I do not see how a state can cancel a federal election. Before we ever get to November, though, we have to get through August. And this August, we have a lot of things on our ballot. Not only are there 11 Democrats running for U.S. Senate, there are 3 Democrats running for governor, Mayor Skoog, Ethan Corson, and Cindy Hulsher. We have 2 Democrats running for the 1st Congressional District, Colin McRoberts and Lauren Reinhold. We have 2 competitive primaries for 2 of our county commission districts. If you live in County Commission District 1 or 4, or Patrick Kelly or Jean have been your commissioners, those are the districts where they both have a primary challenger.
District 10.
And District 10, House District 10 has a primary as well. Anybody else? I almost feel like we had even more in 2004.
Is Eric spot up too? Because I think Kirsten's running against her.
Yeah, but that's not a Democratic Party primary. Kristen Kuhn is a libertarian, one of the libertarians in leadership in our county, and she is running for District 5, but no Republican is running, and I feel really good about Erica being victorious again this fall. So we have to get through this primary. We strongly encourage you to vote no against the amendment. Do not let billionaires buy our courts. I love partisan politics. I love it, but I don't want it in my courts. It doesn't go there. It just doesn't go there. Let me explain. My friend Carl Folsom, who is one of our district judges right now, he's currently one of the 3 finalists up for Kansas Supreme Court. Carl is a very serious person. He did not go to any parties in high school. I did. I can verify. He was not there. Carl was at home reading an amicus brief. I am dead serious, though. Carl's great, but he is a very serious person. He is a very serious judge. He takes the law very seriously. One of the coolest things about him is I've never heard him say, oh, they should make the law this way, or we should do this. I do that. I say that. I want to change the laws. I want to change who's making the laws. No, serious judges are about, this is what the law says. I can explain it to you. These are the implications to that. They're very serious people, and I just don't want to ever try to run a judge for office. First of all, they're not great at parties. And they really want to talk about statutes, and that's not how you raise money. So, like, this would just be terrible all around. So please vote no in August against the amendment. We'll ask you to again vote no in November. In November on our ballot is essentially a Baby Save Act. It is a poll tax, and it will prevent tens of thousands of Kansans from registering to vote. When we tried something similar like this in 23, over 30,000 Kansans were prevented from registering to vote and being able to vote. There was a lawsuit. We sort of won in a district court, and that's why currently you don't have to prove your citizenship every time you register to vote or every time you go to vote. We are against poll taxes here at the Douglas County Democratic Party. We support the Voting Rights Act that has been decimated by our U.S. Supreme Court. We support a new Voting Rights Act, which has been written and not passed yet. So hopefully we elect more people this November that support things like voting rights. We, as a county party, have knocked over 10% of the Democratic doors in the county so far, but that is not enough. The vast majority of people that we talk to on doors and on the phone do not know that there's an amendment coming up. If you are in this room, you are clearly and probably the top 10% of the most informed people, the most informed voters in the area. And so we really need you to talk to everybody else, because people just don't know. As soon as you tell them, oh, they're going to do this with the judges, and people say, oh, well, that sounds bad. They just don't know about it, though, right? Or if they feel like, you know, their voices aren't heard in the party. We had 4,000 people stay home in November of 2024 that are registered Democrats here, right? So please encourage people to participate in this primary, because that is their opportunity to pick the more conservative or the more progressive Democrat that is running in these races. I've also read something kind of funny in the newspapers, and I don't know where they get this information from, because I got to tell you, you cannot talk to 600 or 1,000 Kansans and extrapolate that across the state. As a scientist, that is not statistically significant. But people talk a lot about these polls where they talk to a whole 1,000 people. Okay. I am told that Hamilton is still a front runner in this race. But I can't get him to come to any of our stuff. He's never come. He refused to be a sponsor to Party Blue for the Douglas County Democratic Party. And I don't even know what to think, because you can't win a primary without Douglas County. We have over 30,000 Democrats here, and we are going to get them to the polls. Early voting opens on July 15th. Personally, I'm going to go on the first day so I can get it over with. Don't forget that as soon as you vote, you get taken off of the text and the phone bank logs, okay? So if you don't want Christy calling you again, or you don't want to hear my voice.
I don't want to call you again either. Please save me.
Actually, she kind of does. She will call you again and she will talk, but you don't want to hear my voicemail. You don't want to hear my voicemail on your phone 3 times saying, please go vote before August 4th. So go ahead and get it done as soon as you have decided who your preferred candidates are, and get it done. We also have a lot of yard signs in the office. We got some now for both Ethan Corson and Cindy Holscher. We have some for Colin McRoberts. I think Lauren will have some soon. We have some for our county commission candidates in there. And I know some people say yard signs don't vote. But Alana and I disagree. Alana moved up here recently from Humboldt, Kansas. She's now a Lawrence resident and also a pre-CP running for precinct number 40. Yep, thank you, Alana, for coming up and jumping into the work. But she had a yard sign out, and now her neighbor's going to vote and going to vote for her candidate, right? I mean, yard signs they are a visual reminder that stuff is going on. It's election time. So please stop by the office and grab a yard sign or two for whoever your favorite candidates are, or one of the vote no signs, and help us get the word out that something big is happening. It's going to have a huge impact on our lives, right? I am so pleased that Christy Davis is running for U.S. Senate. She first came to speak to us here in April of 2025. I just realized I'm holding this hat and I didn't pass it around. Wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I know. Well, I did my hair bigger today, but David Berkowitz is a very long time Douglas County Democrat. He was the very first and the last Democrat county attorney we had, because we had the district system start after he became our county attorney. He was the first person to offer a diversion program in the state of Kansas. Other prosecutors and defense attorneys thought it was cool. They came and talked to him about it, and within a year and a half, it was a state law that a diversion program is available for certain crimes. I personally benefited from that when I was 15 and got caught driving way too fast in a construction zone late at night. And it helped me make different choices. And so I do think the diversion program is an amazing thing, and David Berkowitz is personally who is responsible for that. David used to stand up with a cute hat and remind people to pass the hat for your local county party. It's really important. We're the ones getting people on doors, not some of these, no offense, but bigger campaigns. We're the ones that have people on the doors right now. And we need to be able to pay for stuff to take to them, right? So if you can, in your heart, come up with a few dollars to put in the hat today. It is going towards postcards, phone banks, and getting people out to vote. We already have our staff paid for the summer, so this is going towards direct voter contact. One of the things that I like so much about our guest speaker today is that she is a fifth-generation Kansan. I'm going to blow part of your intro because we want to hear you talk about smart stuff. Adam Hamilton, who is a mega pastor in his millionaire home and church, he's very proud to be Methodist. But I just remind people, if you wanted to vote Methodist, you could vote for Christy Davis. She is also a Methodist. So there's that. The other fun thing is that personally I like to vote for people that are also parents. I have 4 kids. I just don't think you can understand what I go through day to day if you aren't a parent necessarily, or involved deeply in raising children, especially in today's times where the food is so incredibly expensive, where rent has gone up so much and wages haven't. I know that I personally am part of the 80% of the economy that is not doing well. 80% of America does not have what they need and are financially not okay. We are going to have to make different choices at the federal level, and we need to elect people that are willing to protect the regular working people of America. Christy lives in Chase County, which is a beautiful part of the Flint Hills, and she lives in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home in a town of 900 people. She is the ultimate real Kansan. Please help me welcome Christy Davis.
We don't know how many bedrooms are in that cabin near Great Bend, right?
Oh, right.
Okay. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I know that today is Juneteenth celebration here in Lawrence, and I don't want to keep people from that. That parade starts at 11. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief, but I want to give plenty of time for Q&A, because I think what differentiates me from the competition in the general election is that I'm not afraid to show up and answer whatever question comes at me. I have been myself a public servant, and I've managed folks at the city, state, and federal level. And those folks, it would never dawn on any of them that you could walk out on your constituents, that you could just decide, sorry, I'm not answering your questions, bye. It would never happen that way. So it's important for me to answer questions on issues that are important to you. So thanks again for coming. As Melinda mentioned, I am a proud fifth generation Kansan. I have spent my life in Kansas. There are people in this room, I'm not going to name names, who have known me for 30 years. Multiple people, okay, so 2 right there. They're self-identifying. All right, so, and like they know me pretty well and they keep showing up for me. So I guess that's a good sign. But I have spent a lifetime working on projects in Kansas, helping Kansas communities. I've worked in every county in the state. There was something on Facebook yesterday about, well, how is it that I just don't trust that Christy Davis has worked in every county in the state. But
It's true.
Chris
I've
Courtwright
seen
knows, and
it.
Marcy Francisco knows,
Yes.
and Cynthia Meyer knows. So I really have worked in every county in the state because I served in local and state government. I ran the state preservation office for years. I created an economic development program that's now had an impact of about $10 billion in Kansas. And through that and consulting and also government work, I really have. I also ran Symphony in the Flint Hills for 6 years and worked in a 22 county area there. Worked with a lot of farmers and ranchers and people from all walks of life. Some people who saw the Flint Hills as a pretty place to paint, and some people who understood the work that it took to maintain as a cultural landscape. So yes, I have. I'm the only candidate in this race who can say that. I'm also the only candidate in this race that has experience at a leadership level fighting for Kansans in Washington, D.C. And when Melinda invited me to come today, she asked me to talk about USDA. Because what's the title of this series? It's like a lecture series, or what's it called? Saturday Seminar. Okay. So we're not going to have a seminar just on me, but Melinda asked me to talk about the USDA because it's very, very important now. You all know this, and it's particularly important to Kansans. I just want to say before we dive into this, and hopefully by the time we're done, you'll agree with me, I'm the only candidate in this race who has experience in rural. I'm the only candidate who lives in a rural community. I've seen the ballot in my own county. I'm the first person on the list, and it says Christy Davis, Cottonwood Falls, and that just makes me really, really proud. I live in a county where there's only 259 Democrats, and most people don't agree with me on politics, but they've been very, very, very supportive because even if they're not out on the street corner saying so, they're not happy either. They recognize, and they've seen that I do the work. I live very simply, and I spend most of my time and resources helping in the community and helping throughout the state. So the reason I say that experience is important, I also grew up on a dairy farm that went under in the 1980s, like a lot of farms in the farm crisis. We never thought we would be in this situation again. Some of the stuff is kind of PTSD inducing for me. I mean, I grew up on this dairy farm. I watched everything be auctioned off. I watched my parents struggle, and no one should have to go through that. We shouldn't be in the crisis that we're in, and the truth is, we know better. We should have learned lessons from the past, and somehow we keep repeating it. By we, I mean Republicans. Anyway, so the reason I say that is the expectation, because in Kansas, there are a lot of issues. I've worked in rural, urban, and suburban communities. I've worked in KCK, I've worked in Wichita, I've worked everywhere. But because agriculture is our #1 industry, the expectation for a U.S. Senator from Kansas is that that person will serve on the Ag Committee. And it's kind of important that that person know what they're doing when they serve on the Ag Committee. And it's also important that that person, I am not a farmer, okay? I'm not. I have worked with farm organizations, Kansas Farmers Union, Kansas Farm Bureau, Kansas Black Farmers Association, all the farm organizations on all kinds of issues. And the difference between me and other folks is that I don't come in with the answers. I don't pretend I'm a farmer. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but I know who to call to get the information. I will sit down with experts. I believe in experts. I believe in science. But I'll sit down with anybody, and I'll sit down with people who, I mean, my team just rolls their eyes and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you wasted your time with that person. You're never going to change their mind. And I've surprisingly changed some minds, and that's fun for me, because I think everybody should be approached with respect, and everybody should be listened to. And then in the end, if they don't make any sense and they're illogical and dangerous, then you're not gonna take their advice. But it's important to try. So I will sit down and listen. That's been one of the challenges with Senator Marshall, is that he's not known for sitting down and listening and solving problems. He comes in with the answers, and Kansans don't appreciate that. Some of you may have seen an article that I wrote in Kansas Reflector about an invite-only town hall meeting. Alana was there. Yes, Fort Scott, Woodson County. It was an invite-only meeting, and we invited ourselves. And so Alana invited herself with lots of protesters and lots of protest signs. I showed up without a protest sign and just walked right through the protesters and walked into the meeting and sat down. And what I learned was, even this invite-only crowd, they were expressing concerns, and those concerns were not addressed. So if you want to read about it, I wrote about it in the Kansas Reflector. There was a journalist who was sitting next to me recording the whole thing, but he ended up printing my article instead of writing his own, I think because he preferred to put someone else's name on it. That's okay. That's the other question I get asked, because I show up sometimes in skirts and heels, and people say, well, what makes you think you're tough enough to be, in DC? And it irks me. And my response is, well, I had 36 hours of labor with one kid, and I've had a double mastectomy, and my kid is autistic, and I've raised him. Like, I survived. I can do anything. Yeah. And I'll tell you, my life is still easier than my parents. So, anyway, I go see my mom every Sunday, or I try to, and she lives on Social Security. It's kind of important in my world that we not impact these social safety nets. So, I want to just talk real briefly, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but this is the org chart of USDA when I was a White House appointee at USDA. I spent 3 years as a White House appointee at USDA Rural Development as the state director for Kansas, but I also led a nationwide initiative, because people are like, well, wait, you were a White House appointee, but you were in Kansas? Yes, I served Kansas on the ground, but I led a national effort to make sure that all of the funding from the bipartisan infrastructure legislation and the Inflation Reduction Act got spent, and that those projects were efficiently moved through the process, because communities shouldn't have to pay $100,000 for consultants to navigate a $100,000 project. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So anyway, I spent 3 years doing that. I mentioned some of these people have known me for 30 years, so that's 3 of 30 years. But it is important, and I learned a lot, and I've been involved in other things, and we can talk about that later. But this is USDA, and I want to focus on, I'm going to hit the next slide here. I want to focus on 3 areas. So the USDA is funded by Congress, right, in the Farm Bill. We have farm bills every 5 years, and we'll talk about that, but every five years, supposedly, there's a farm bill. We passed the last one in 2018, which means a new one was due by 2023. It hasn't happened. When Biden was in office, they blamed it on the Democrats, and now they're still blaming it on the Democrats. Don't ask me how that's working out. But the Farm Bill, the modern Farm Bill, is a creation of Kansans. Kansans created this thing. And the idea was to give farmers and rural communities some certainty for 5 years at a time. Like, let's set policy and make sure that farmers can trust that it's not going to change, that we're not going to dump tariffs every 5 seconds on whoever we have a vendetta against, okay? The reason Kansas played such a crucial role in that was in 1996 during the Clinton administration, Dan Glickman from Kansas was our Secretary of Ag, and the chair of the Senate Ag Committee, Bob Dole, was a Kansan, and the chair of the House Ag Committee was a Kansan. And so we'll talk about that. But we created this, we created stability. We are also the ones who came in and said, listen, not everybody on the coast, where a lot of the population is, understands farming or even understands the importance of it. How do we make sure that everyone has a vested interest in the Farm Bill? Let's put nutrition programs in the Farm Bill. SNAP, kind of a big deal, kind of important that people can eat. So I want to focus on three things. So there's different titles to the Farm Bill, but they address different things. So this is farm production and conservation, and of course it's a federal agency, so they call it FPAC. FPAC, Secretary for Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services, so that includes SNAP, although that's changed. I mean, historically that's been in USDA. And then rural development. So I don't want to get into all the weeds. Those are just three things I want to touch on real quickly. So we talked about the Farm Bill already. Here's Bob Dole's press release. Dole leads Senate to pass landmark legislation. They were proud of the fact that they had a farm bill that impacted everybody nationwide, not just rural folks. And also, don't forget rural development, because 98% of the people who live in rural America are not actively engaged in production ag, okay? Here's just one of the I've seen many statements. We've had so many promises. Senator Marshall is on the Senate Ag Committee. He's promised over and over and over, we will pass a comprehensive farm bill. They've done bits and pieces through the big, beautiful bill and other things. But there's a reason that this hasn't passed. So, Farm Service Agency, so we talked about FPAC, right? Farm Production and Conservation. There's two main components to Farm Service, to this Farm Service Agency and Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS. And again, I don't want to get into all the gory details, but this is your county USDA service center. Historically, every county in Kansas had a service center, and it was staffed by farm production people, it was staffed by conservationists, and it was staffed by rural development people, okay? Statewide, FPAC, when I was at USDA, had about 800 people. And the reason is, you know this, I mean, to do anything in rural communities, or in urban farming too, you need people, real people in an office that people can come consult with and help them navigate the red tape. And it's the same for rural development. We'll talk about that later, but this is yours in Douglas County. So in Douglas County, there are people at Farm Service Agency. They're the ones who work principally with, farmers on lending and that sort of thing. And then in RCS, they help people be proactive about conservation practices. You may have seen this in the news in the last just couple days, right? This was June 17th. I called the state director of NRCS. So we had two presidential appointees, two White House appointees when I was at USDA. So we had an FSA director, and that was Dennis McKinney, and then myself at USDA Rural Development. When I was at Rural Development, there were 800 people in FPAC in Kansas. So these were people all over the state working on the ground with communities, which is what you need when you're doing ag. I called the state NRCS director because he was the only one of us that wasn't an appointee, so he didn't get fired when Trump got hired. And they have lost 40% of their staff. I don't know exactly the numbers of FSA, but Congress was appropriating funds for these programs, but they weren't funding the field people to help people navigate the programs. So it was designed, in my opinion, it was designed for failure. So you may have seen this legislation that Sharice Davids worked together with Derek Schmidt to make sure that these offices were kept open and fully staffed. We'll talk about rural development. It's a different thing. Okay, rural development. So I just pull up, every now and then I pull up the website for USDA Rural Development in Kansas. This is the office where I worked in Topeka, and it is now closed. During the first Trump administration, we all know the base, his base voters, a lot of them were rural Americans or people who lived in the middle of the country, right? So you would think that rural development would have been important in his first administration. That was not the case. He never appointed an undersecretary for USDA Rural Development. So by the time I got, so let me back up. There were 130 people on the ground doing rural development in Kansas, historically. By the time we walked in, and anybody read The Fifth Risk, Michael Lewis's book? Anybody a bigger nerd than I am? Okay, raise your hand if you're a public servant or a retired public servant. Okay, you gotta read this book because it will make you so proud of the work that you've done and the value of public service. But one of the stories featured in that book, so Michael Lewis wrote Moneyball. He's a great writer. He makes public service fascinating. But one of the stories that he highlighted was someone who was an undersecretary at USDA Rural Development during the Obama administration, and her experience, as a friend of mine, her experience then transitioning into the Trump administration. In other words, there was no transition. They never came. They put all these reports together, all this information together, it never went anywhere. They never appointed an appointee. So we had 130 people on the ground in Kansas. We were down to 30 when I walked in the door. We had to rebuild USDA Rural Development. Now Congress was still appropriating the money for the programs, but they were filling the swamp. I'll put it that way. They were filling positions in DC, and what that meant was my first week on the job at Rural Development, my local senior housing facility burned. 3 blocks from my house, there was a fire, someone died. And we were told that they had to call someone in Washington, D.C., and that they might show up at some point. No, they never got a human there. So even though I wasn't supposed to, I'm meeting with these folks trying to figure it out, because it's my own community. I know the manager of the senior housing. It's the only multifamily housing we have in town. That's not cool. Culturally, people who live in coastal urban areas generally cannot relate to Kansas. Kansas is an acquired taste. Kansas is culturally rich, but it's not something that's easy for folks to navigate if they don't understand our population density and all of that. So last time I checked the website, they're down to about 10. Just so you know. We worked to rebuild the staff. We were working to get people in the field. They're down to 10. A lot of the people that I hired got doged. And I know why they left. I know what happened, because one by one they come to me and tell me. While they work there, they're not supposed to talk to me, I don't think. So here's something to keep in mind. You all know this. During the first Trump administration, there were things that they wanted to do that didn't happen. One of the things they wanted to do was shut down the USDA's Rural Housing Service. There's a report from the Heritage Foundation in 2016, and I'll share this PowerPoint. This is a link, but I don't want to take the time to. They had a whole report about shutting down the Rural Housing Service, which they thought was a great idea because they thought, we don't want to be in the housing business. What they didn't understand, though, and they never mentioned in the reports, but that the Trump administration took on this time around, is that it's the Rural Housing Service that funds all of the rural hospitals, community centers, firehouses, police stations, all the things that, it's not just housing. They have this idea of government housing, and that's what the private sector should be doing, although no one's gonna build housing in my community, it doesn't make sense. So they're like, we gotta shut down the Rural Housing Center without realizing what that meant. But now they're working on it. This is another link. I will take this one. If you want to, I'm going to leave time for questions here, but if you want to learn more about kind of my
personal experience, rebuilding all this stuff and then watching it be torn down again. This is an article that I wrote in Kansas Reflector about a year ago. And this is a quote that I actually have on a plaque because my background is historic preservation. A good thing to remember, a better thing to do, work with the construction gang, not the wrecking crew. Because it is so much easier to fix something that's broken than to have to rebuild it after somebody destroyed it. And so if you want to hear that story, that's there.
And you also did a recent interview with Kansas Reflector, is that right?
I did, yeah. If you go to Kansas, I'm not sure where my presentation is. Ooh. Okay, that's okay. If you go to Kansas Reflector, there's also a podcast interview where they're talking about the campaign. They interviewed me when I was state director for USDA Rural Development, and then they, I should look, this is not my laptop, but I'll make sure, okay, yeah. One time I was giving a presentation with one of my staff. It was a national event. We were doing a national training on environmental review, and she had a picture of her with like a boy band. I was like, over in this, I'm like, okay. She was really embarrassed, but anyway. Okay. So there's lots of places where you can learn more, about me, about our campaign. Christy Davis for Kansas.com. I've got materials here, but let's take 10 minutes for Q&A, and you can ask me anything you want. And if you apologize, I'm going to tell you not to, because the truth is, I'm interviewing for a job, and the job is to answer whatever question comes my way. So, yes.
Real quick question. I'm sure many in this room are horrified at there we go. I'm sure many people are horrified at the latest dynamics that are going on, including and especially huge charges for forever wars and, American bombs killing children. All of our current representatives to DC take money from organizations like AIPAC, and one candidate is endorsed by Track AIPAC as being good. Have you thought of working for a Track AIPAC endorsement, or what's your take on this forever wars?
Not a fan of forever wars. We refuse to take care of the veterans we have already, and now we're out creating more veterans, and we've cut funding. We've cut 80,000 jobs from the VA. I have worked to provide housing for homeless vets as part of some projects that I've worked on. Not a fan. I have committed in writing to never take AIPAC money. As far as an endorsement, I don't know that we have pursued that in particular, but I have committed in writing not to take AIPAC money. The truth is, Israel is our only ally in the Middle East. I support the Israeli people, but a genocide is a genocide. It's clearly defined. We're the ones who created the definition for it, right? Yes. And now we're arguing about it. So I imagine, and I've talked to folks who know more about this than I do, that there's a lot of, like in the United States, there's a lot of people who aren't supportive of Donald Trump's policies. It's the same with Netanyahu. We know what right or wrong is because that's what we teach our kids. So I personally, I don't want anybody to own me. I want to be able to work, and call me Pollyanna, but I want to be able to represent you. I want to represent the people of Kansas and what's best for Kansas. And we haven't taken any corporate PAC money. Our campaign is a grassroots campaign. It is challenging because we won't raise the kind of big bucks. I mean, we won't spend, there's one candidate in particular that will spend more than we spend. We're very strategic about it, but I don't want to be owned. I want to be able to work for Kansas.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm from Johnson County.
Yay!
So we need more presence in Johnson County.
Yes.
Christy.
How
can we do that?
Great. Let's get together and we will talk about it. So I've been to Johnson County a lot.
Have you? Okay.
A lot. But that doesn't mean anything, right? Because the people who show up at events like this, I mean, there are people who are they're informed voters. We know from this poll that came out yesterday that 55% of the voters, according to the poll, 55% of likely primary Democratic voters are undecided in my race. For me, that's a huge opportunity. I will tell you the only way we can reach them, so we've got a huge social media presence. We have a greater following than anybody on social media. We have worked with the party. We've worked with labor, when I started this campaign, I personally reached out to every single county chair, every single district chair, every single state committee member to begin that ball rolling, and we've participated in a lot of Johnson County events. But the truth is, there's a lot of voters who won't be informed until right before the election. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I have to go vote now, who do I vote for? And the only way to reach them, I'll be completely crass, is money. We need the money to get that message out. Obviously, canvassing huge, and it is why it's important to support your county parties, because they provide the infrastructure for that. And Douglas County's, I've been working with Linda for over a year now, and very well organized, as is Johnson County. I mean,
So get the check.
but, I mean, the truth
She does have
is,
to drive from
I don't like Citizens United either, okay? I don't. If you want to know where the money comes from for the person you're voting for, then you got to be the one giving them the money, because nobody else, I'm not going to go to APAC and get money, right? So that's just the harsh reality. And here's an example. Things like signs, things like palm cards. I mean, I've taken a huge hit. I mean, this is a sacrifice for me. I don't have a trust fund somewhere, okay? It's a sacrifice for me to run. I've been without a salary for about a year and a half. And my husband's not a neurosurgeon. It's just like, so it's a sacrifice for me, but I can't do this alone. Volunteers are important, but I have to have staff to manage all of that, to help manage that. And to have the best people, you gotta pay them. And this is their livelihood. Like, I'm willing to take that hit. They shouldn't have to, right? So that's part of it. We've got to build up enough that we can get that word out. And even ads on social media, like boosting social media. If you see when I made, we posted a picture of me filing, and that, I think got 5,000 hits or something. I'm guessing that, we probably boosted that. Those are the kinds of things that it's cheaper than traditional media, but it costs money to do that stuff. Yep. Thank you. Marcy.
Can you talk a bit about commodity crops?
Sure.
Why can't Kansas have milo or sorghum on that list? Do we have farmers that are farming insurance rather than crops?
Yeah, so here's the thing. A couple things that we haven't even talked about. Screwworm.
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh.
Right? But okay, let's talk about crops. We have a system that rewards large acreage, right, and huge operations. One of the things that we learned during COVID was, oops, farming's kind of about food, and our distribution system's broken. And so a lot of what we were trying to do during the Biden administration was to fix that. It's clear in Project 2025 and the policies that they're promoting now that they're not thinking in that way. We were working to try to help smaller producers who could serve more of a local community. The challenge is that they've continued to promote this idea of commodities and large operations, and then they've killed their markets. We don't have USAID. Not only did we kill 1 million people, Kansas lost 700 farmers last year, 700 farms. And there's a suicide crisis. There's all these things that go along with that, and those are the kinds of things that once you lose them, it's hard to bring new farmers in. As far as markets, then we've used commodities as leverage and with tariffs and all this other stuff, and we're playing with the farmers and their stability, and they can't make it. It's why we have five-year farm bills. It's like, okay, this is the policy, and here's what we're going to commit to you. They pulled all of that, a lot of that stuff back, and it had huge ramifications. I know farmers that well, I know farmers who, because of the drought, don't have a crop, but, and are insured, that's, but I know farmers who, if they can afford to, they'll store it until they can find a market for it, but then they're not selling it because of our broken policies. But that's the difference. And this plan, like even out of Project 2025, it's all about efficiency, and you know what that means. It means like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I've worked a lot with smaller operations. I've worked a lot with people who produce food for their community, urban farming. We had a lot of incentives for that because we thought it was important. That's changed back, and it'll probably whiplash again because there's no farm bill. There's no 5-year plan. Yes.
This is not a USDA topic.
That's fine.
Can you talk briefly about your work with historic preservation?
Yes. I've been doing historic preservation work for about 30 years. I wrote my first National Register nomination when I was still in college at K-State. Forgive me. I went to K-State, but KU hired me to write their preservation plan. So, I started out at the State Preservation Office. I started out as a local preservation planner. That was my first real job. And then I was recruited by the State Preservation Office. I ended up kind of running the State Preservation Office, and as part of my work there, I was hired in part to manage the rehab tax credit program. And at the time, Kansas had only had a handful of projects. I developed the legislation and advocated for the legislation that created our state rehab tax credit program. It's had an economic impact now of about $10 billion statewide, and it's one of the few programs that survived the Brown Act administration because we had a two-pronged advocacy approach. We worked with the business community, like banks, people who finance these kinds of projects, and developers, and then we also had grassroots people whose communities benefited from these projects. We brought them to the State House. And we were able to say it was one of the few programs that survived the Brown Act administration.
I wish we had a slideshow though, right? Because it's just like hotel in Cimarron, that's you, right?
Oh,
this
oh,
building
yeah.
in Hutch, that's you.
Yeah.
This building in Colby, that's you.
Okay,
I
the
just want to see a
only thing keeping us
slideshow.
from doing that is money. No, but I was talking to my sister, and she's like, I've always wanted a map, where people can hover over their county and see what I've done in their own community. I mean, my work here started with Baker Wetlands,
Right.
just way back stuff. So yes, and I've worked at Haskell, and I've worked, with urban farming, and I've done a lot of work everywhere. When we got here, we were unclear which corner we were on, because I used to have this show called Wood, Brick, and Stone, and it was on PBS, and we featured the Masonic Temple because it's one of maybe 3 Egyptian revival buildings in the entire state. I mean, that's how geeky I am. So I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be at the Masonic, no. We're gonna be but it is very often that I will walk into a meeting like this in a county, like Pratt County. I walked in and I'm able to say, hey, I've been in this building before because I helped save it, or I helped rehab it. And by the way, when I was in Pratt County, the building next door that was a hotel that got converted to low-income housing, I helped with that. We created 113 units. But again, there's been speculation, well, how on earth could this person have actually worked in every county?
There's only 105, very big.
But one reason is, I'll be frank, my husband and I were married for 17 years before we had our son. And so, all I had was work. And
It helps.
yeah. And the first time he identified a bungalow, my heart sank. Yes, Justine.
I have a question. I think it's something that's been on my mind for a long time. And this question is actually for anyone that's in the public eye. When Democrats take over the Senate and the House, and everything. Do we have a plan in place already to start? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Are we just kind of really go in, or do we have in fact a plan?
Okay, yeah, so the question is, yeah, do we have a version of Project 2025? There actually are people who have like a Project 2028 and have figured all this out yet. But here's the thing. So much has happened in the past year and a half that we didn't expect. Who knows what we're gonna walk into by January? The first thing we have to do is reverse all of these insane policies. But the second thing is we have to put an infrastructure in place that's better than what we had. We need to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, that we're not in an autocratic environment. We need to address, and this isn't the party in general, but I personally have endorsed universal health care. I helped advocate for that. And here's why. I helped advocate for the Affordable Care Act. It was an improvement to what we had before, but it wasn't perfect, and we knew that. It was a compromise. The challenge is that we've got Republicans who don't even, they're cutting what we've got already. And so there was a reason for that compromise. Some of the stuff, you gotta look at numbers really. But yes, we have policy plans on a lot of issues, and I'm happy to share that with you. Start at our website and look at Facebook. We've made statements on a lot of these things. I've also, when I drive, I do a lot of reading, and I've read a book. Oh my gosh. It's revolutionary. One of the books that just came out, I think it came out on June 6th, and I just read, is called The Fix. Yes, Barbara McQuaid. There's a lot of scholarship on here's how we get from where we are now to something better. But I'm telling you, it's a generational approach. I mean, first thing is reverse these devastating policies. Next thing is work on the larger plan. But it takes a lot less time to tear things down and build things up, and it's going to take decades. That's why when I hear people run in for U.S. Senate and we're like, I'm just gonna get in one term and I'm gonna do everything I want, and then I'm gonna back off and let someone else. It's like, good luck. Because when they say that, that just tells you they've never worked in government before. Right, Marcy? Yeah. How long have you been at it? 20 years?
Since 79.
Oh, okay, but in state government.
Oh,
since,
22.
Yeah.
And as one of those officials, I better get out to the parade.
Yes, go to the parade. Okay. I will stay and answer any individual questions. I'll stay for a while, answer any individual questions that you have. I want to make sure that people feel comfortable getting out and get to the parade. But anything else, Melinda, that we need to?
Thank you.
All your friends and family register, everyone you know, make sure, don't assume that someone's registered to vote. Okay, and I'll stay and answer your specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today and speaking. Thanks, everybody. Check out South Park if you don't want to do the parade. There'll be lots of tables, events, all kinds of things down in South Park for the Juneteenth celebration.